Hi, Ron. We are on live. Thank you so much for coming here to the Impact Revolution channel. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks, Yoshi, for inviting me for this series, Impact Revolution. I've seen some of your videos and they're very, very interesting.
Thank you so much. I love that you like it. So, just to start, as we discussed, I'm going to ask you a couple of questions so people can know you a bit
Sure.
better. And then later we can go to the professional, more business related questions. Yeah? All
Sure.
right. So, the first question will be, for instance, if you could wake up tomorrow anywhere in the world, Ron, where it will be?
Yeah, that would be probably more than one place. So I think if I would wake up tomorrow, one of them would be in Trinidad and Tobago, where I spent 6 years outside of
Uh-huh.
Barbados studying.
Uh-huh.
It's a very beautiful country, very, very, very diverse, much more diverse than Barbados. Like
Uh,
when I
Okay.
first, my first week of getting to Trinidad and Tobago, I actually got sensory overload. There were so many different colors. The music was so diverse. The food was so diverse. The people and ethnicities were so diverse. I would definitely want to go back there. And maybe the second place I would want to wake up is Amsterdam. I think it has
Okay.
a really great culture and it has a good mix of modern architecture, modern culture, but also has an appreciation for its history. So those are the two places. If I couldn't wake up in Barbados, Trinidad and Tobago, or Malaysia.
All right, very good. Thank you very much. I like Amsterdam. I after talking with you, I want to go to Trinidad for sure. So it's on
Yeah,
my
you
list for
should.
sure.
Yeah,
Okay,
let me know
second.
where you're going. I'll meet you over there. I'll jump on a plane.
All right, that would be cool. That would be cool. So next question, Ron, will be all right. Someone who really admires you and knows you very well. How will define who is Ron Johnson?
Yeah. The people that know me very well will probably give you an answer that ranges around the word complex. So I recently had a breakfast business meeting with a colleague of mine, and
Uh-huh.
she was asking for advice on her business and building her brand. And at the end of the conversation, she stood up, she looked at me, and she said, Ron, you are an enigma that can't be figured out. You are a conundrum that cannot be understood. She said, I think with a very corporate mind, but I also have a creative side. And she just shook her head and laughed.
All right, very cool. That's cool. All right, and you can have this. Now we can go to the business question that is related, I think, with that. You say that you merge HR with branding, right?
Yeah,
And you create this thing of how is HR branding, or how is the word? Sorry.
Brandon, it's called the branding equation.
And so,
Yeah.
so, uh, how did you come up with that? What is the meaning or what is the purpose of that, right?
Okay, so first on background. So my academic background is actually the sciences. I have a bachelor's degree in biology. And when you're
Okay.
in a student of biology, we study biology, chemistry, math, physics. And in the natural sciences, there tends to be only one uh, empirical answer. You know, like a math question has a binary question, it's either right or it's wrong. Same thing for chemistry, same thing for physics. But then I got sort of disillusioned halfway through the program. I did a behavioral science degree. And in behavioral science, there's no one singular answer. A lot of the questions are compare and contrast, give your opinion, give
Uh-huh.
new thoughts to something. So that actually contrasted quite a lot with how I was taught to learn in natural sciences. So my brain started to look at business challenges from more than one perspective. And we are a branding agency in Barbados called Blueprint Creative. And we did everything from design of logos, advertising campaigns, marketing campaigns. And we kind of suddenly realized that even if a company has a great exterior brand, meaning a great website, great packaging, great logo, great brochures, and even
Uh-huh.
if all that is great and it works and brings customers through the client's door, if those customers meet disengaged employees giving poor service, you still have a terrible brand, right?
Mm.
So it led
Sure,
us to
sure.
realize that brands start on the inside of the organization, right, with the company culture, not the outside. So gradually, what we started to do when we were talking with companies about their brands, which was typically external, we would start nudging them to include HR in the conversation because HR is mostly the people who would likely involved in company culture, employee engagement, employee experience. And it went
Uh-huh.
from nudging them to saying, no, if we're going to work for you, HR has to be involved, which is not a very popular approach in Barbados. Um, but what's happening globally, Fortune 500 companies, they recognize again that brands are built from the inside. And what a lot of these companies are doing is they're encouraging their branding or marketing teams to work
Uh-huh.
directly with their HR, right? So they would help HR market the company to their team members and employees. And HR would support marketing by saying, hey, we have a problem here. If you're going to do a sales campaign, these are the types of people we need inside. So when people come through the door, they service clients well. So what we did is that we created a new business framework. It's called the branding equation, right? It's BRANDING
Uh-huh.
plus HR equals BHRANDING. So it's still pronounced branding. The H is silent, but it's a way for us to communicate with our clients that HR is central to branding.
Hmm.
So since we've
Excellent.
done that, we've been invited to speak on the topic in Barbados, Trinidad and Tobago, Jamaica, Cayman Islands, USA, Mexico, and even as far away as Malaysia. They were like, "This is very interesting. We want to hear about it." So I've
Uh-huh.
been on the road quite a lot talking about my philosophy of brand and HR working together. And we're doing some research. We found examples of marketing professionals who switched over to HR. We found examples of HR professionals who switched over to marketing. And when you speak to them, it's amazing. They all say the same thing. They all say that marketing and HR are two sides of the same coin. Same coin.
Uh-huh.
Both marketing and HR are about engaging people. Marketing is about engaging the customer, external stakeholders. HR is about engaging the team members and employees. So
Uh-huh.
that's what's happening globally right now. We found examples of marketing, HR teams, HR departments hiring marketing people to work in HR. This would not be
That's
possible
very
10
cool.
years
That's very
ago.
cool.
It is
All
very
right.
cool.
And what is your main lesson learned in those years of experience that you had engaging with companies, telling them, you should merge these kind of things and work together to be more impactful?
First thing, employees come first, not customers.
Uh-huh.
For years, decades, maybe even centuries, businesses said the customer is always right. The customer comes first. I actually consulted with a company in Barbados, a very, very large company, and they were kind of in the tech space. And I was invited to consult with them, and my direct contact was giving me a tour of the place. And she
Uh-huh.
stopped in front of this big poster, like an inspirational poster meant to inspire people. And that poster had the customer comes first. And she said to me, this poster is the number one reason we have such low engagement in our company because
Mm.
it says the customer comes first and employees felt second best. So we had to
Uh,
work to kind of change their opinion. And if you take a look at some of the biggest thought leaders in our generation, Richard Branson says the customer does not come first, the employee comes first. If you take care of your employees, they will take care of your customers. There's another quote I like to say is if you can't sell it inside, you can't sell it outside. So if you can't sell it to your employees, you can't sell it to customers, right?
I never heard
Now,
that one. That was a good one. Yeah,
yeah.
that's
So
good.
what I say is that Simon Sinek says, customers will never fall in love with your company unless your employees fall in love with it first. And I always say, your customers will never love an organization that is hated by employees, right?
Mm.
You can't expect disengaged employees who hate their jobs to give great service that leads to customer loyalty. It's impossible.
Yeah, yeah, that's very good. That's very good. And that's all about the culture and about kind of working all together like a tribe and all these things which I think is very important to long-term success. Very
Yeah.
good. And anything else apart from this employees come first that you kind of have a lesson learned that you could share with us?
Yeah. So what I learned from biology. So I have to admit, I don't remember a lot of my biology academics. I've probably forgotten 99% of 99% of what I learned. But what I do remember is that in biology, it teaches you it's not the strongest or fastest organism that
Okay.
survives. It's the one that adapts most quickly, right? Same thing in business. It's not the largest or the most funded company that survives. It's the company that moves fastest, the company that is able to adapt more quickly to the environment. And what we're
Uh-huh.
seeing is that the environment is changing so rapidly because of technology.
Uh-huh.
And you're seeing smaller companies beat out larger companies that have billions of dollars. And some of those
Mhm.
companies are now bankrupt, and these smaller companies are now surviving and thriving. So even if you are a small company, don't despair. You have to look at how fast you can adapt to a new situation.
I love that. That's very in line with what I do. Is with this agile mind lab, because I think everybody needs to be more agile in the way of the mindset and change the way they think and the way they see things, and let go all ways of doing businesses, and start adapting and
Yeah,
engaging now, for instance, with artificial intelligence and automation that can completely change the whole game. So
exactly.
how do you do that in your case, Ron?
In my case, for my company, or in my case, for my clients.
Okay, so like, because you say two things, right? The first is that employees come first, and then
Yeah,
second, you say about the biology thing, which is the survival of the fittest, or the survival of the person who adapts quicker and and moves more agilely. So I
right.
was wondering if you also in your programs send something about that, show them, teach
Oh
them
yeah,
about that. Yeah, I
yes,
was
of course.
wondering.
So where our company now is a prime example of that. So we started out doing design. That's when we started in 2008. We only started in design, um, design of logos, brochures, and reports, etc. And then we
Uh-huh.
evolved to more design strategy, because when we were talking to our clients about their strategy, we realized that CEOs and marketing managers were scribbling notes as we talked, and we realized we were giving away our strategy service. So we adapted to become more design strategy. Then we adapted again to conventional branding, which was much broader than design. And then when we were in conventional branding, we realized, wait a minute, something's wrong. Like, we're doing all these great campaigns. Actually, we had a situation where we did a huge campaign for a client, and we advised them to take a look at their HR, their customer experience, and they said, yeah, we got it covered. And I think we hit like 175% or 200% of their sales target, and they were ecstatic. And it was the worst thing that ever happened to them, because the next year, when they tried to do another campaign, customers remembered that they didn't get great service. So the campaign was mediocre. I recognized that there was something missing from the conversation. And what was missing from the conversation was the part of the brand that deals with culture, employee experience, employee engagement. So we
Mm,
inserted that and we adapted, because if we had stayed in traditional branding or design, we probably wouldn't exist right now. Right now, we're one of the first company, well, we're the only company in Barbados, one of the first companies in Caribbean, and possibly one of the first companies globally, not the first, but one of them, to recognize this huge shift of people saying our brands are built from the inside. And we developed our framework, which is now working fantastic for us, because people are saying, okay, yes, we want HR involved, but how do we want HR involved? When they reach out to us and say, we agree with your framework, we agree that marketing and HR should work together, but we're not sure how to make this work. So they reach out to
mm.
us.
Okay, very interesting, very interesting. All right, and what is the main obstacles that you find mostly in the companies, right? Because I guess there's going to be some resistance, either from HR, either from the executive team, or either from others, right? So,
Well, I'm blessed to have some great business partners. I tend to, because I told you, I saw problems from different perspectives, from my academic background, but also from, like, my parents taught me to think and be analytical. So I'm blessed with
uh-huh.
business partners who listen to what I have to say and listen to the vision. So I don't get very much pushback on that.
Hmm.
And in terms of the clients, even if clients have never heard of the idea of marketing and HR working together, there's little resistance because of the way that we present it, right? We simply say, in modern companies, brands are built on the inside. Do you agree? And they'll agree. And then you say, well, if brands are built on the inside, your HR professionals should be part of your branding team. And they say yes, even though they've never thought about it. And then we're going to explain how these two work together. So once you explain something to someone, you don't have a resistance. I think resistance comes maybe from people who don't acknowledge they have a problem. So if, for instance, I
Uh,
talk to a CEO and the CEO doesn't realize there's a problem, then
mm,
he's not going to want our services. He's not going to want to change anything, right? And
okay.
that's when the problem comes. When you have a leader who is unaware that there are serious problems in the organization, that's where the problem comes.
Sure,
or
sure.
a leader that thinks he can do it himself or herself.
Very interesting. And do you have or any experience to kind of influence or negotiate that with that kind of leader?
Yeah, we have, and sometimes it's not a good fit. I think business
Yeah.
leaders have to know when to say no as well to a project, regardless of what the money is. If we see, we've had situations where we had clients that weren't a good fit, and when we said no, our business actually grew because then we could focus on companies that fit, companies that want
Definitely.
to hear what we have to say, right?
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
So for me, if I see a project, and it doesn't matter what the bottom line is in terms of the size of the contract, if I realize we're working with a business leader that does not acknowledge they have problems, I think everything is great, or wants to go in a particular direction and says, no, I'm not inviting HR, this is strictly marketing, and HR and marketing have no business working together. It's much less likely that we'll say yes to that project. We'll probably seek a
Sure.
project that we're so recently.
Hmm.
Recently, a company came to us and they wanted a campaign, and we listened to what they needed. What they actually needed was a movement, right? They didn't need a campaign. A campaign has a start date and an end date. What
Uh-huh.
they really needed was a movement that starts and sustains itself and grows beyond a final campaign date, right?
Okay.
And they were very, very receptive to it. And the next call we had the HR manager, was fully on board,
That's
and
cool.
those are the clients that we go after. If
Definitely.
we have a choice between working with a company that acknowledges it has problems, wants to try something new, wants to say, yes, I can see how HR and marketing can work together. And you have another company that is saying, no, I don't see the vision. We're always going to choose the company that
Definitely.
aligns with our thinking.
All right, very good. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I was also curious, you say about the HR, the branding part, right? And the things that we talk mostly is kind of the customer, well, the employee comes first, and more kind of the mindset and the culture. I was wondering, when you do the branding and the campaign, how that translates to, let's say, that part, the brand.
Yeah, so it translates in a huge way. So we worked with one company. They had initially called us for a visual rebrand. And after we had a conversation for about 90 minutes and we were about to go, I started to ask some questions. What is your company culture like? Do you have core values? Do you have a purpose? Do your employees know your purpose? Are your employees as productive as when the supervisor is out of the room than when the supervisor is in the room? And all of a sudden, the tone changed. And at the end of the conversation, they said, we're going to delay the visual brand. What's more important right now is our internal brand, right? So we worked with them to improve their internal brand. We set out a whole set of initiatives. And it was a limited time contract for, let's say, about 6 months to a year. And about a year afterwards, I came across one of their employees in the supermarket of all places, and he spoke to me. And I said, well, how is the program going? The core values and the culture and the purpose. And I'll never forget what he said. He looked at me and he said, it's going well for the company, but it's also going very well for me personally. And I was very confused. I said, well, but what do you mean? He said, I decided to adapt the company's core values that he helped us to articulate into my own personal life. And he
Uh-huh.
said, I now think I'm a better husband and a better father for that. I never expected a response like that because that's not what we went to do, right? But it just shows the transformative power if you have employees who want to be the best professional versions of themselves. But this guy also wanted to be the best personal version of himself, right? And that's the power of transformation. Our program transformed not just the company, but it transformed the employees.
Oh, that's beautiful. That's a beautiful story, because at the end, is life and business kind of goes together, right? And if one
Yeah,
is
they're
not,
integrated.
yeah, so you want to be the same person and authentically the same guy, and you don't need to, make anything fake or pretend to be someone else, right? Which I
Yeah.
think is kind of the old way of doing business. That's cool. That's really cool. Now, okay, now about your book. Okay, I always
Oh,
wanted to ask you, all right? This Tighten
yeah.
Your Lazy Shoes. Tell me about a bit
Yes.
more about the name, please, because I'm
The
curious about
name.
the name. Yes.
Sure. So the first name of the book was actually supposed to be called, it was during COVID, that's when I wrote the book. It was supposed to be called Surthrival, meaning not just survive, but thrive. And when I checked, the name was already trademarked, and I was so disappointed.
Uh-huh.
And then I remember a story that I tell at every one of my conferences, every one of my workshops, every one of my client engagement. My story goes like this, right? There were these two guys who were hiking through the forest, yeah,
Okay.
and they encountered this huge angry bear, and the bear was just ready to devour them. So the first guy, he bent down really quickly. He started to tighten his shoelaces because he's ready to get a run for it, right? He wanted to make sure his shoelaces were tight. And the second guy looked at him and said, "What the hell are you doing? You can't possibly outrun the bear." And the first guy took off on a sprint. He looked over his shoulder and he said, "I don't have to outrun the bear. I just have to outrun you," right? Because the bear is going to take care of the slowest guy when he gets away, right? So the whole book is about tightening your organization's shoelaces so you can be more agile, right?
Uh-huh.
So you can be
Uh-huh.
more adaptive. And when you have bad circumstances like COVID or economic depression, sometimes you don't have to take on the entire bear. You just have to run faster than the next guy. So that's what the book is about.
Ah, okay, very good. That's very nice. I love that
By
story.
the, way, by the way, I'll send you a copy of the book so you can have it yourself.
All right, thank you. Thanks a lot, Ron. I really appreciate that. What is the main lesson learned then from the book? Like, it's going faster, but is there any practical things that we can apply in today's?
Yeah, yeah. So the book is very, very practical, and it takes what I did many case studies, for instance, of companies that have tightened their shoelaces in different ways, right? So there's a famous story of Ben and Jerry's ice cream that was going up against big players like Haagen-Dazs, and Haagen-Dazs threatened the distributors that if you carry Ben and Jerry's, you can't carry Haagen-Dazs, and Haagen-Dazs was worth more money. And what Ben and Jerry's did is that it had no money for a legal fight, so they took the fight into the public domain. They went to Haagen-Dazs's corporate headquarters. They did a strike. They told their customers all about it, and it got picked up in national media. Haagen-Dazs had to back off. Right?
Uh-huh.
If you take a look at Marvel Studios, for instance, a lot of people don't know Marvel Studios. The MCU is doing great right now with Captain America, the Avengers, Thor. But what a lot of people don't know is that I think in the 90s, Marvel was bankrupt, right? And what they did is that they repackaged what they already had and repurposed it and moved into movies, right? And now they're successful. If you take a look at BlackBerry, BlackBerry was the first, arguably the first smartphone, but then it got destroyed by Apple and Android. So what did it do? It was on the verge of bankruptcy. It left the smartphone market and it reinvented itself. It tightened its shoelaces by reinventing itself. And now it's a very successful cybersecurity company, now worth millions again, right? So the book is full of practical examples of how to tighten your shoelaces. It's not theoretical. You read a book, there's a story on just about every single page that you can adapt and take and use in your own business.
All right, very good. Thank you. Very nice. I love the stories that you are sharing, and I can tell you are a very good storyteller. And I'm going to ask you something about that later, okay? But before
Sure.
that, all the stories that you have gathered in this book, okay, and all the ones that you already know that you probably didn't include because of the space, what is, do you think, the thing that makes these people, right, these leaders or these teams or these organization, all right, to be able to change, let's say, that kind of mindset, right, or the culture in a quick way, all right, in order to be able to reinvent themselves, right?
Right. So a lot of that goes back to what I call brand anchors, right? They're the things that anchor the company to during rough storms. Think of a ship with an anchor, right? So your anchors are things like your purpose, your core values, right? So if you have a core value where you encourage people to be agile, or if you have practices, so for instance, 3M, I think they have a program, I think it's 10%. Their employees are allowed to spend 10% of their time on their own projects, developing their own projects.
Mm,
Google does the
yes.
same thing, right?
Uh-huh.
What we've done is that we encourage people to look for ways to improve and rewarded them. So in our industry, if you were like say printing a book, you have the artwork on the screen and you have to do what you call freezing the artwork. You have to go through every single page and make sure it's frozen so that the letters don't space, the fonts don't default. I remember one of our team members said there has to be a better way, right? This is how everyone used to do it. This is how the colleges taught to do it. This is how everyone did it. And he did some research online. He did some tweaking, and he found a way change that process from what could be an hour or 2 hours down to 5 minutes, right? And if you calculate the number of magazines, documents, books that we've done, he saved us hundreds of thousands of dollars. But he
Uh-huh.
would not have done that if we had not created a culture beforehand where we encourage people to be innovative and try new things, right? You can't
Mm.
wait until there's a crisis to tell your employees, we need something new, we
Mm.
need something different, because they're not in that frame of mind. If there's some bosses that tell their employees, I hire you to do and not to think, that's the
Uh-huh.
worst thing you can ever do. Before there's a crisis, you need to develop a culture where people are rewarded for being innovative. They're recognized for being innovative, and no matter what industry you're in, you have
Mhm.
team members that can call it innovation. So don't wait until there's a crisis. Develop that culture of innovation and change and adaptability beforehand. That saying, don't fix it if it ain't broken. That's not entirely true,
Yes.
right? You
Uh,
have to fix things before they become broken, and you also have to be willing to kill your existing products, right?
mm.
Kodak developed the first digital camera, and did not let it see the light of day because they were protecting their film business. Kodak is no longer the giant that it was, And there's so many. If you take a look, Apple killed the iPod because they realized that the iPod was kind of stopping them from selling the iPhones. It's now kind of bundled. So sometimes you have to be willing to look at your existing product and say, I'm not doing this anymore. And there's some things that we used to do in our business that we don't do anymore. You
Mm.
have to be willing to kill your own projects.
That's right.
Netflix started with DVDs and they killed DVDs and went to streaming. You have to be willing to kill things before they become a problem.
Okay, I love that. I love that. It's about at the end about preparation, right? About getting ready for the unknown, right? And to be able
Yeah,
to adapt and to thrive. And as you say, you
yeah,
cannot do it without any preparation, just from one day
yeah.
to the other, right? Love it, Ron. Thank you so much. Okay, we are almost 4 minutes to end. I was wondering,
Sure.
do you have anything to share that you would like that we haven't covered yet, Ron?
Um, no, well, I would like to say to keep learning and don't assume that you know what you know, right? So this happened to me when I was about 5 or 6 years old. We were traveling in our car. My dad was driving. My mom was in the car. I was in the car. My sister was in the car. And the news radio came on, and it was about a story about a house that got burnt down. And the newscaster said the house was razed to the ground, right? Razed to the
Uh-huh.
ground. And the only raise I knew was RAISE, means to lift up, right?
Uh-huh.
I wasn't aware that there's a second raise, RAZE, which means to burn to the ground. So when I heard the newscaster, I said, hey, that newscaster made a mistake. You can't raise something to the ground. And my mother, who was a linguistics teacher, she was a French teacher, she turned to me and she explained the difference between raise and raise, RAISE, and RAZE. And I felt a little bit embarrassed. And I said, well, how am I supposed to know that? My teacher never told me that. And she's a teacher. And she looked at me and she said, Ron, you cannot rely on your teacher or your academics to teach you everything that you need to know. You need to go there and learn for yourself. So right now I have like 300 books in my library on business. I'm so far away from my mentor, John Spence, who you also interviewed, by the way. And John Spence wrote the foreword to my business. I have to catch up with him. He has an insane reading habit. But I've read
Mhm.
like maybe 300 books on business and core values and branding. And I think my final thought would be, don't assume that the body of knowledge that you have right now is enough to take you forward. You have to
Mm.
keep on adding to your body of knowledge, whether it's books, podcasts, webinars, audiobooks. You may think you have all the information you need, but you don't. But it is
Uh-huh.
out there. Go and find it and build a stronger business. Build a stronger
Uh-huh.
brand, build a stronger business.
I love that. It's lifelong learning. There is no other way in order to keep going and to progress. Lovely. Thank you so much for that. And what is your, now that you say about this, what is your main source of learning?
So I used to love hard copy books, but I do a lot of driving now. So I use Audible books. So when I'm driving, I listen to it. On occasion, I do get a chance to read a hard copy book, but it's mostly Audible books. I do classes on I forget the names, but there are a lot of platforms out there like Coursera,
Uh-huh.
that where you can go and you can pay a minimal amount of money. It boggles my mind that people don't want to spend $5 for a course, or $9.99, or $50 for a book that can help them to build a stronger business. It really boggles my mind. Um, a lot of the information, if you don't want to spend any money, if you have no money, a lot of this information is totally free, right? So it
Uh-huh.
boggles my mind. I would say go out there. So for me, it's Audible, books, webinars, podcasts. For some person else, maybe something totally different. Find what works for you
Uh-huh.
and absorb it like a sponge, because
Yeah.
once that stays in with you, it's there with you forever.
Love it. Thank you so much, Ron.
Thank
And
you.
I wanted to ask you, all right? I know you gave me this brochure of yours, and you said some of your favorite books. Do you have any book that could you recommend about branding, especially, right? Because OHR branding, apart from yours, okay, that we already
I was
saw,
gonna say, hey, no, but yeah,
that it could be your favorite that is not in the list, or that you
sure.
highly recommend.
Uh, I highly recommend John Spence's book, Awesomely Simple. That
Okay.
book changed my life. I also recommend Start With Why by Simon Sinek. If you are
Uh-huh.
having, I love a book called Radical Candor. It talks about having tough conversations in business. There's also any book by Jim Collins, Great by Choice, Good to Great, Great by Choice. I love Delivering Happiness by Tony Shea. Unfortunately, he's passed away now. I think those would be my really top books that I would recommend.
Okay.
There are more, but I know you was asked for a few, so those
I'm
are the
going
few.
to get to the Jones one as well. I'm
The
finished.
what?
I'm Korea. I haven't seen it, so I want to read it because he's a great guy and I really like him.
Okay,
Very good. Thank you. Well, last question. Okay, we are in the last minute.
sure.
If there was any message that you could leave to the world, to the whole world, what message would you leave?
Be more empathetic.
I
Everyone is
love it.
going through something. Everyone is
Hmm.
going through something. You may not know what that person is going through, but everyone is going through something. I know people who are dealing with deaths in their family. There's some people who are dealing with mental health illness, and you might see them people in general acting strange because they're going through something, and you might don't write them off, right?
Hmm.
Sometimes you just have to, not that you need to be inclusive and ask them directly, but there's some people who are having problems with divorce, people that are having problems getting kids, who desperately want kids. There are people who are in a job that they hate, but they have so much potential and they don't know what to do. There are people who are having problems with their friends, their family members. Just be more empathetic. It may not be
Uh-huh.
your business to be their confidant, but it's certainly your business to offer support how you can. Simply be more empathetic.
I love it. Thank you so much, Ron. I think
Thank
if
you.
you are okay, we can end with that. Be more
Sure.
empathetic to the message. All right.
Sure.
Thank you. Thank you. It was an absolute pleasure meeting you.
Thank,
Thanks a lot for sharing.
thank you for
Yeah.
having me. I
Okay.
really
Keep in
enjoyed being here
touch.
today.
Yeah. Me too, Ron.
Okay.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot.
Take care.
Ciao.